The dawn in Rome is not just a spectacle of light, but a call to work, especially for those who live in the shadows. In an imposing domus in the Subura neighborhood, the air is cold and heavy. While the paterfamilias still sleeps in his adorned bed, the strike of a match and the acrid smell of burning oil announce the beginning of the day for a domestic slave. Her name is Livia. She lights the lamps in the dark corridor, her steps light so as not to wake the masters. In a tiny, windowless room, other slaves are already stirring silently. Far from the polished marble and statues, the real life of the house begins long before the sun. But in the plains of Latium, just a few miles from Rome, the reality is harsher. The icy morning air penetrates the tattered tunics of an agricultural slave named Ciro. He wakes to the sound of a whip cracking and the shout of Avilicus, the overseer of the estate. The smell is of earth, sweat, and manure. His bed is straw on a dirt floor in the slave quarters. For Livia and Ciro, the day is not defined by the sun, but by work. And work, for them, never ends. The popular image of a Roman slave is often that of a man in chains, toiling under the scorching sun, like a gladiator or a quarry worker. This is a real image, but not the only one. Slavery in Rome was not a single experience. It was a vast and complex system that encompassed an impressive range of functions. From brutal labor in the fields to the intellectual work of a teacher or doctor, a slave's life was as diverse as Roman society itself. Some slaves lived in conditions of extreme cruelty, with a very short life expectancy, while others could enjoy a relatively comfortable life, with the possibility of gaining freedom. There were slave doctors who cared for the health of senators, slave accountants who managed fortunes, and slave tutors who educated the children of the elite. To uncover the true routine of a Roman slave, we must look beyond the myth and understand the hierarchy and complexities of their existence. Slavery was the bedrock of the Roman economy and society. It is estimated that at the height of the empire, the population of Rome and Italy had a slave ratio of up to 30% to 40%. The main source of slaves was warfare. Victorious legions brought back thousands of captives, who were sold in markets throughout the empire. But slavery was also a hereditary system. Children of slaves were born into slavery and one of debt, although this practice was mitigated over time. Slaves were not considered citizens. They were race, property. Their master had power over their life and death, although imperial legislation eventually imposed some restrictions on extreme cruelty. They did not have their own names, but were given names by their owners, and were identified by their function or origin. A slave's life was an eternal negotiation between their master's will and their own ability to survive and, if possible, prosper. The hope of freedom, or manumission, was the greatest incentive for hard work, obedience, and loyalty. Livia's day begins well before dawn. Her first task is to prepare the house for the salutatio, her master's morning audience. She lights the hearths, sweeps the courtyards, and ensures everything is impeccable. Afterward, she helps dress her mistress, a task that could take hours, involving complex hairstyles and jewelry. Livia was part of the Familia Urbana, the team of domestic slaves, and her work was a mix of personal service and administration. After the salutatio, she might be sent to do shopping, deliver messages, or care for the children, a job that required discretion, intelligence, and unquestioning loyalty. Ciro's day was brutal and repetitive. He and other slaves woke to the crack of the Avilicus's whip. Breakfast was a portion of cereal, porridge, or bread. They were taken to the vast fields of the Villa Rustica to work from sunup to sundown, planting, harvesting, or tending livestock. The work was closely supervised, and the slightest sign of laziness or insubordination resulted in physical punishment. Life in the countryside was lonely and exhausting, with little hope of advancement or freedom. The only relief was the forced camaraderie with other slaves. Not all slaves worked in the fields or homes. A slave tutor would spend the afternoon teaching Latin and Greek to the master's children. A slave doctor, on the other hand, would attend to the family's injuries and illnesses. Their routine was less physically arduous, but it required knowledge, patience, and often even greater loyalty to their master, as one mistake could cost them their life. These slaves might have the chance to have their own peculiarm, a small sum of money they could save, and use it to buy their freedom. Ciro's work continued under the scorching sun, with only a brief pause for a meal of bread and water. The afternoon was the hardest part of the day, with fatigue building and the sun beating down. They worked in teams, often chained to one another, to prevent escapes. The absence of autonomy and the lack of hope were the hallmark of their existence. Livia and the other domestic slaves continued to serve their masters throughout the night. They prepared dinner, served the guests, and, at grand banquets, might spend hours on their feet, attending to every whim of the guests. After dinner, they cleaned the house, put out the lamps, and finally, could rest in their quarters, exhausted but aware that the next day would be an identical repetition. For Ciro, the night brought the only relief of the day: rest. After the last meal, he would lie down in his quarters, where the silence was broken only by moans of pain and the rustle of straw. Rest was the only way to regain strength for another day of toil, knowing that his life was an endless cycle of work, pain, and, for most, an end without freedom. Our understanding of Roman slavery is rich with evidence. The writings of Cato the Elder in his book De Agricultura provide a detailed guide on how to manage a farm and its slaves, showing the cruelty and efficiency of a system focused on profit. The letters of the philosopher Seneca to his friend Lucilius, on the other hand, offer reflections on the humanity of slaves, calling for fairer treatment, which shows us that an awareness of slavery existed, although it was rarely applied. Archaeological discoveries at sites like the Villa of the Mysteries in Pompeii have revealed the tiny and dehumanizing rooms where slaves slept. The furnishings were minimal, consisting only of wooden beds and a few personal objects. Analyses of slave skeletons found in Roman cemeteries show signs of malnutrition, untreated bone fractures, and joint wear due to heavy labor, confirming the brutality of their lives. The discovery of bronze collars with inscriptions like "I have run away, catch me and return me to my master, Vespasius" is a chilling testament to the total lack of freedom and the dehumanization of slaves.